Scott Johnson, his wife Monique. They come to Wenatchee from L.A., which where I come from means Lower Alabama, but for them it's Los Angeles area, and where they had lived their lives up to this point, till God called them to this unusually strange place they'd never been to before, to minister here. And God has used them in a mighty way. From the very first time we met, I felt an unusual kindred spirit. And I guess it's maybe 2 years ago now, I'm not quite sure, but heard a knock on the door on Sunday afternoon, and it was Scott. He said, do you realize you're under an evacuation order, and you're supposed to be out of your house? And I said, what for? He said, there's a wildfire right across the street. Look up on the bluff right up there, and sure enough, there's smoke going in here. So we evacuated just far enough down the road that we could watch it and take video of the helicopters flying over and everything. But we got to be really good friends that day. So since that time, we've prayed together, we've rejoiced together. And one of the greatest joys I had was last Thanksgiving, going down to the rescue mission and not only serving those who are residents there, but also sitting and eating Thanksgiving dinner with them. And it was an honor. It was I felt very humbled at that opportunity. So I'm going to ask you, Scott, come on up. You've got from now till you're ready to go, okay? And we have been known to serve supper here as well. So, but come on and share with us what God has placed on your heart, and it's an honor to have you with us. God bless you.
Can you hear me all right? I'm not used to wearing this thing, so
No.
I'm not sure.
No, there's not sound coming.
No sound?
Oh, there it is.
Oh, come on in. Yeah.
Apparently I need to push for my mouth.
Oh, there you
How's that?
go. Good.
Good.
I talk loud anyway, so you'll probably hear it whether you like it or not. So, well, thank you so much for having us here today. I always kind of go right into the mission and kind of forget to tell people how we became what we became in ministry. And Monique and I met when we were 15 and 16 years old, so just a little while ago. And, it was weird because I grew up in the church, but I really didn't believe in the church much, because in my home it was domestic violence, and the person who was the abuser was my dad, and he was a Sunday school teacher. So my immediate idea of church and leadership in church was liars. That you say one thing, but you do a complete different thing. We open our Bibles at church, but when we get home, that goes up on the shelf. We never see it again. So growing up, I really didn't believe a whole lot in the church. Believed in God, 100%, but didn't believe in the people. And as time went on, I started getting into a rebellion of just really going against the church people, because I figured if I can't reach God and ask him why things happen, I can reach his people. And so I really started to just really go after people, and if they told me something confidentially, I'd let it out, just to try to hurt people. And it was really just opposite of what I really felt inside of who I was, because growing up, I always had a compassion for people. I would look out the back door of the car as we're driving to see someone who's experiencing homelessness. I just overwhelmingly get upset. I mean, from age I can remember on. Or seeing an elderly person across the street and stop and couldn't go any further and helping them cross, or whatever it was. So it was completely opposite of what I really was inside. But fast forwarding, we got married when I was in the U.S. Air Force during the Desert Storm time. A little different. I was already out at 9/11. And, things change rapidly when you start thinking about God a little bit inside, or maybe there's a little bit of mustard seed in there that you're trying to expand. And I took an injury to the leg and I had to get out after 4 years. And I planned on being there forever. And kind of just threw us into a spin of what am I going to do now? So I ended up going into security, because I was security forces in the military, and went into healthcare for 11 years. And that just kind of blossomed into something I didn't expect, and went into doing safety, which was a whole different idea in the healthcare. Started training ER doctors and nurses when violence started happening in the ER, so I became a trainer, going all over different hospitals in Southern California training. Then I got into disaster and was over the entire disaster network from basically right at the edge of LA all the way to San Diego. And so I was in my early 20s with a big room like this, full of doctors, nurses listening to me who had barely a high school diploma, trying to tell them what to do when something happens with biochemical warfare and things like that. So it was just a whole weird stance in our lives. So I worked in a contract security service for a while, and the deacon of a church was mad at me because he owned the company, or was manager of the company. And I just believe in being open with everything. And the client who I worked for received bad service from some training that somebody else had given in our company. So I said, you know what, you're right, it's bad. And my manager didn't like that and started yelling and cursing me out over the phone. So I hung up the phone, immediately sent my resume to Disneyland, thinking I'll never get in there because you got to know somebody. And within a week, I got a phone call back, and within 3 weeks, I was already working at Disneyland. When I arrived at Disneyland, I was there 90 days, maybe 4 months, and the HR called me in and said, hey, we didn't realize you have no degree. You have to have a degree here because you're running the whole resort at that point. Yeah, we need you to, have a degree. I said, tell you what, keep me for a year. I'll run circles around anybody you have here, and I'll guarantee you that I won't need that degree. And sure enough, the first year I ended up getting Manager of the Year, which is out of 14,000 people. So it wasn't something that I did. I say these things not to brag about what God's done, and then you'll see how my trajectory goes with all this. And so, man, living it up, we were able to get in for free. I could get my family, friends in for free. I mean, I was like living the high life. I was rubbing up elbows with movie stars and sports stars, and I mean, they asked for me specifically, and so it was really just one of these things where I was like, okay, now I got it going on. And I was not in church. I was still out. I'd been out in church about 10 years, and just really just living a life and thinking I was going to go up, and I was moving up in the company. I knew the president of Disneyland at that time, Michael Eisner of Disney Corporation, used to call me on the phone and, Scott, I'm coming in. My wife's coming in. Can you get her a parking space? Yep, right in front of my office. And it just really just was living that life. And then God decides to step in. And that was a whole thing I did not expect and did not want because I had it all. And so we were going to a church that, because I guess it went too fast. We were going to, I wasn't going to church. Monique Kimball says, I'm going back to church. And a lady, we always say the crazy lady across the street, invited us to the local, no offense to you, well, to the local Nazarene church. Everybody's crazy in the Nazarene church. And I couldn't stand, I'm like, well, my dad, I can't go to church. I can't let her go by herself and I'm not showing up, So I decided to go and started getting some kind of interest in church. As time went on, I thought, well, maybe I did feel a calling. I really did. I thought, well, I don't know what or how, but is the Lord going to lead me to be a preacher maybe, or some kind of pastor? So I started talking to the pastor and having a really just great moments with him. I ended up getting a local pastor's license. And then during that, the pastor stopped meeting with me. I'd show up on every week when we'd have a real good conversation. Then he just stopped showing up. I don't know what was going on. Unfortunately, he ended up having an affair with another person, and that broke the church in half. And that's when I went like this and just backed up and said, I'm not doing this anymore. Because I, once again, was hurt, thrown to the side. I was hurt. And the gentleman that works in the church came up to Monique and I said, I'm going to try to start church at a school. Why don't you come with me? Little did I know that he had another motive, or God did. Because he said, you know what, you need to go work at the Union Rescue Mission, which is in Skid Row, which is one of the most dangerous, highly populated homeless areas of Los Angeles. And I said, no, I'm not doing that. He says, no, you need to go. I said, no, I don't. You don't see what I have right here. I've got all these things, And Monique says, you need to go over there. God's calling you. And I was not happy with Monique at that point. I was like, mm-mm. And I remember going back and forth with God, just arguing and putting my fist up and literally saying, because I was an operator. I worked in operations at that time. I was, not a person. I was not a pastor. I felt that if I could mow lawns in heaven, I was probably going to be lucky. Get to the gate, say, look, is there like an outside area I can just camp? I'll do the lawns and stuff while people come in. Don't worry about it. I got you, Because there's no mansions for me. I guarantee that, And so I went there and had 6 interviews, I think it was, for a mission. And I thought, do you know who you're talking to? I run all of Disneyland for crying when he says, I have 400 employees that will report to me at any given time. Everybody calls me after hours to make sure everything's going okay. Do you really? I was so arrogant. I looked back and go, And they said, well, we want you to come in for one more interview. And out of my arrogancy, I said, you know what? I said, if you don't know who I am by now, I'm not your guy. And I hung up on him. So I was like, there you go, Lord. I did it. I'm done. And I could tell Monique, you didn't get the job. 15 minutes later, they called me back with a horrible offer, terrible benefits. And she said, you better answer. I don't care what you men say out there. your wives offer the voice of reason that God uses against you and for you. And so I did. I left the job. And I'll tell you, the president, I'll never forget, the president of Disneyland walked up to me and she said, if you ever go work for a nonprofit, you're committing career suicide. And I remember turning at her, and it was a female at the time, the Disneyland president. I looked at her, I said, you know, Cynthia, I said, it's better than creating an eternal life that I just don't want anymore. And so I walked off the job 2 weeks out of there and went and started working in the mission. Boy, I got down there and, which was not to be kids, my first week there, a person had committed suicide and landed right in front of me on the street, jumped out of the building.
Oh.
And so I was like, what have I done? You know, just chaos. If you can just imagine the most chaos you can imagine, that's what it was. The police forces coming up and down, taking people in, drugs, I mean, everything going on, name it, it was happening. Shootings, stabbings, all right there in front of us. Now, I was kind of used to that because growing up in the neighborhood that I grew up in, people getting shot, things happening like that were kind of the norm. As a youngster in junior high, I was running drugs and not using, but taking backpacks and delivering them where they needed to go because I didn't have any money. My dad lost his job, so that's how I got my money. Now, it paid really well, and I was, you know, look at me. I didn't look like the average guy that would, especially as a kid, drop down stuff on my bike. And, you know, God just kept saying, and I say God, I didn't know then, just get away from that. And I did, and I ended up getting a work permit and working at McDonald's at 13 years old to support the family. But, you know, that kind of environment was just kind of where I was and what I grew up in. So for a few minutes, I thought, you know, these are my people. You know, this chaos, the violence, this is just kind of what I do. I'm actually comfortable. So 13 years at that mission I stayed. It was an amazing journey. Monique and I, within about, what was it, how many years were we there? About 5 years? I was working there 5 years, and they said, Scott, we need you to find us a property that has enough room for women and children. I said, great. So Christmas Eve, we got this fax. My CEO said, I need you to go check this property out. Went over there and looked. It was 71 acres. Needed a complete renovation because it was a property for retirees that they had just abandoned because the company was no longer in business. We ended up buying the property, and soon after that, they asked Monique and I and my family to live there. So we ended up living on the ministry for 11 years with 225 women and children that are experiencing homelessness. Something that just about anybody who doesn't have that kind of experience. We just did it because we felt that's what we needed to do. I still was playing Christian though. Even working at the ministry. I should have never been hired, basically. And you know, it wasn't that I didn't believe in God. I just was having so many issues with the abuse in the home and watching it happen and not doing anything about it. I was living with guilt that wasn't mine. And a volunteer, and I said, a volunteer came up to me and said, you need to go to the men's encounter. And at this encounter, I'm like, no, I don't do anything with men. I've never been to a Bible study, never been to anything. And the guy came up to me and says, I said, look, I can't pay for that. It's $200 and some. He goes, you don't understand, it's been paid for. So the Lord knows how that works with me, because in my neighborhood, when somebody does something for you, you don't not do something back, or you owe them. That's just the way it was. How your brain works. There's no going back on your word. So I was like, oh my gosh. So I went there, and the one time second time I saw it snow in my whole life, we had the worst snowstorm ever. So we're driving this bus up of 60 guys, and the bus crashes. So we're going up, and it literally slides off into a ditch. My first thought is, well, first I assessed my situation, which we do in the military. Who was I going to eat first? Because it was literally in the middle of nowhere. Second thing is I went to God, didn't pray. I said, I did what you asked. Can I go back now? And so we sat there for 4 hours, and it was snowing, and I looked up, and I see these little headlights coming down the hill. I didn't think much of it. It was 3 pickup trucks, like Toyota Tacomas. I'll be darned if it took them 3.5 hours to get us all up into this camp area. And I thought, really? Really? So I sat there, and Monique tells people all the time about this. We were texting back and forth. She could tell from my text that God was working, into my life. It was crazy. And I didn't know it, because I was sitting there, and the last night, they had this big thing where they put a cross up, and you nail up your sin and all this kind of stuff. And I've seen it all. I've been in church. I mean, whatever. I was like, okay, fine. I throw the Bible down, and I pretend to read. I really did. And because I didn't want them to look at me, because I knew I needed to go up there, but I didn't want to. So I'm looking at this thing, and it's Jeremiah 29:11 opens. Now I know they're talking to the Jews and all, it's really nothing to do with us, even though kind of people take it out of context nowadays. But what I read was that God's not going to hurt you. And I didn't care about the prosper or anything like that. I was like, what? I had never heard that, ever. Because in my house, hurt was normal. When I tried to commit suicide, many times, I was told, you're going to hell. You do that, you're going to hell. God takes people out like that. So I thought, well, God's the shot caller. He's going to take me out. What difference does it make? I had no idea why, what? And that's when a bunch of guys came around me because I was sitting in the chapel much like this by myself. They came around and started praying, and everything lifted at that point. I had never experienced anything like that. I could not believe that all that stuff was gone within 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever it was. I mean, I've been living a life like that, and I was in my late 30s. I had no idea. I mean, I've heard it at church. I've seen new Christians jump around, and Jesus loves you, so do I. And I just like, how? How's that work? I refused to call God Father, because Father in my house was bad. I didn't like that. So God and I had a good thing going. I'm like, dude, I don't want to call you Father. Can I call you just God? He's like, yeah. So it was such a strange event. And that's when really things started changing for us as a family and just really starting to look at things, where we're going. I gave up fighting. I just said, okay, do what you want. Now be careful when you say that. And when he goes, says, be careful saying that. Don't ever say you're not going to do. Because every time I say I'm not doing this, we do it. And I really made that serious that day. And I said, whatever you want. It doesn't mean that I didn't go without a little rebellion. I mean, I always tell people there's that. You ever see that poster? A lot of churches have it up where there's like footsteps where he's carrying you. Mine are drag marks because I'm just kicking and screaming the whole way. And so it really isn't the same for me as I think for some people. It's like, I just walk in, there's this glorious, lights and angels, and he's just like, no. But we started to listen, and we really started to just focus on what God was saying. And moving to the property we did was a big one we didn't even realize we were going to do. Because it became such a giant job, or lifestyle, that we were taking care of these women and children. I mean, I had kids in the morning that would get up for school, so here comes me, waking them, get out of bed just like a dad would. And I always tell people, they say, how many kids you got? I say, well, 4 of my own, and I have about 85 others. And, the kids were the worst victims of the whole thing, because a lot of our women would make bad decisions. And the kids were so intelligent, so smart, just needed stability, and needed to just somebody to care. That's all. Because what we found out is that if they don't get that, they're going to be homeless too. Because we've seen generation after generation. In that property itself, we saw a grandmother with her daughter, her granddaughter, and great-granddaughter all in the shelter together. Because they just did not get somebody to stop and say, you're worth something. Let's do this. And so we learned a lot living there. Fast forwarding a little bit, we worked for another mission called the Los Angeles Mission. I left Union Rescue because we found that ministry will eat you alive, especially living on it, and we just were done. We had to move on. We were burning out quickly. We also realized our kids were taking a hit for it too, because ministry is just always going. And they're like, hello, we're over here. And so we needed to stop. So we went to Los Angeles Mission, and a year and a half after I got there, COVID hit. And that was such a huge thing for us in Los Angeles. I know here a lot of people, I've seen a lot of different attitudes with COVID, but for me, there was 400 men in the building that I was working in sick. My administration, so I was the chief operating officer. My CEO and all the executive team left, and I never saw them again for a year. Left me to run the entire organization. So I drew back on my military experience because the health department of California State said, we don't know your area, we don't know what you guys do, we're lost. Can you help us? So I took what I learned in biochemical warfare, and I used what I knew to do that. Ended up getting adopted throughout the entire state for all shelters, because, and honestly, it's just training. God uses everything, that you learn in your past. It wasn't really that I had some special gift. God just uses it all, negative and positive. And so, we lost a lot of people. We were moving bodies, and because there was nowhere to put them, we put them in the hallways and just wait for them to be picked up. We lost employees. It was devastating. It was devastating to us. And I don't know how it was here in the rural area, but for us, absolutely devastating. We lost a lot of people. And a lot of people got sick, and I was in charge of all going on. So I took some of it very personal, and it was very hard for me. But we didn't give up. I kept praying, and I'll never forget. I remember to tell you how we first met Wenatchee Rescue Mission was in 2019. They called me up out of the blue, found me in some, I don't know how they found me, it was an article, I don't even remember. And so we flew out here in 2019, and they were going to hire us in, but they just, the pay was so bad we couldn't even survive. And so I just kind of turned it down. But that's when COVID started, so God had a different, thing for us to do. And I remember as COVID was starting to slow down a little bit in 2021, just trying to get it all straight, I sat and prayed in my car and I said, Lord, we want to either start our own ministry and do this the right way, because what I've learned in 23 years of doing this is it's not being done right. Because the models of missions are built after failure, not success. And so that evening, 5 p.m., I got a call from the board here again in Wenatchee and said, can you come down and interview again? So within 12 hours, God had already answered that call. So we flew out here again. They made us an offer, offered Monique a job, but she's our director of women's services, and we both run the mission now. And we came here in April of last year, so we haven't been here that long. It is a culture shock for us. There's no question about that. But there's some oddities. I figured out what Carhartt was. So that was one of the bigger things. I didn't know what Carhartt was, and that's all you pretty much can buy. Carhartt, and I think Under Armour and a few other things, but that's about it. And I think I'm still wearing the shirt I have left from California. And then shopping carts. I always say this, shopping carts. Now y'all don't know this, but in LA, you go out of a grocery store, you just throw your shopping cart to the side. Who cares? You hit somebody's car, that's just the way it goes. So the shopping cart things are empty, right? And you come here, I was like shamed. I was like, well, I set my cart down, I looked around, I'm like, where are all the shopping carts? And they're all inside the little holders. I'm like, so I had no idea that this was a thing. You said something weird about that. Because I was starting to leave the cart out. She goes, are you feeling guilty? I'm like, yes. So I walk over and just put it over in the thing. So little oddities like that. Speeding laws here, people seem to obey. In California, speed limits are suggestions. They're not really what they are. Everybody drives about 90. So it's pretty interesting. So here we are. We changed out our entire board in the mission because the board has been there 25 years. And we found that there was just, for lack of better words, the enemy was blocking the mission from doing what it does. Which a lot of people don't know is that Wenatchee Rescue Mission is the largest, oldest mission in the area. We house more people and take care of more people than all other missions combined. So a lot of people don't realize that. And so I came in and I said, why are we not full? You have 5.5 acres. What are we doing? And I remember the board member said, it's the best kept secret. I said, that's a shame. That's a shame that we're the best kept secret. We shouldn't be. We should be the best thing to go to. And so that's when I started making changes. It was very difficult for a lot of them to see change happen. And we lived a year of very difficult time here, with, to a certain extent, fighting our board, just to make changes and do things that we knew were going to work, or to open up our doors to people that needed help. One thing we are not is we're not a church. And so they were running it as a church. Big mistake, because we're not one. We are an arm of the church. I reach out to churches all the time and say, I don't need your money, I need you. I need your people. We are an arm, we are a leg of the church to help people that need help and give you an outlet for some people that can do ministry like that. But we're not a church. So trying to bust open those doors to say we're not a church any longer. We are what we say we are. The Lord called us here to serve people, no matter who you are, whether we're stopping at your house praying with you, or we're going down into under the bridge and getting people out where they are. We're here to serve people, period. And it was an oddity for us, for them, because they'd never done that. They didn't really get that reaching out as a way to get people off the streets. They were just sitting and waiting for them. When I got there, church services were 7 days a week for all of them in, and if you didn't come to them, you were kicked out or asked to leave. So I feel like right now, if you don't want, you'd have to leave if you don't want to hear what I'm saying. It was so backwards that you kick people out when you're saying the message. I didn't get that. So it was so rigid, and so I don't even know where those rules came from. So we changed those right away, and I got called all kinds of cool names, liberal, and I got all kinds of weird things. But that's not what we wanted. We wanted people to come in and share their story and have an ear to sit down and hear people talk. You know, the people we serve are invisible. They're invisible. We all drive by. We turn our heads. They're invisible. Guys holding out the money. Right? So what we're trying to do is people just to listen. We have guys that have been there for 20 years, sitting there, sober, fine. Just need somebody to talk to. We have a gentleman there, he's 80 years old. We just celebrated his birthday. He's a four-tour Vietnam veteran. No alcohol, no drugs. He came into mission when it was first being built because when he was in Vietnam, his wife was murdered. And they didn't let him come back. So he stayed in Vietnam and fought. Just kept saying, I'll just stay. I got nothing back home. And those of us in the military that spend some time there, when you get out, it's a shock. You don't really fit into society at all. You know, I always tell people think PTSD, which I do have, is about the war. It's really about us trying to integrate back into the society that's not the basics. Because in war, you're in the basics. Fighting, food, laughter, that's really what you got. You're at your basics. But when you come back into society, you're going back up to this technology and everything that goes on in society. It's hard for us to figure that out. It's very difficult. And I try to tell people that there is a lot of stuff with war. Yeah, we smell things, we hear things, it messes us up. But at the same time, fitting into society is so difficult. And that's why we have a lot of homeless vets, because they just cannot figure out where to go. It's like square peg, round hole. Where do we go? Anybody seen that movie Rambo? At the end, he always says, I used to fix multi-million-dollar equipment. I used to do this, I used to do that. Now I can't even get a hot meal. That's the truth. I remember when I was leaving, they said, you know, if you ever want to be treated like a second-class citizen, make sure you tell them you're a vet. And it is, some of it's true. It's better nowadays than when I got out. But it's taken me since 1992 to get my benefits, and I just got them this year. I've been fighting that long to try to get my medical benefits, and just to, because my leg is going to have a replacement soon. And I didn't do this. So that's what it takes. And we have a ongoing joke at the VA. It says, the VA giving veterans a second chance to die for their country, because we are constantly waiting and put off. And I always tell people, the veterans, have you ever gone to the hospital and the first thing you do is get a lawyer before you get in? We do. We have to get a VSO, Veteran Service Officer, or we have to get a lawyer that goes and walks us through and has to fight the denials for us the second we walk in the VA. There's no us walking in and going to the doctor, showing a card. Nope. We got to find a VSO or a lawyer first, no matter what. And it's unfortunate. So a lot of the guys give up. I'll just be homeless. I can't do anything anyway. No one's going to help me. And then they just give up. And so that's it. They become on alcohol and drugs. Why? Because they're trying to solve the problem through their own medication that they're using. Drugs, alcohol, and other things that they do. You know, the next slide here. So, a little bit more about the history of the mission. In '83, Charles Hutchins came through Wenatchee and saw a lot of guys who were in their homelessness and thought, man, what can I do? I've got to do something. So this is a very short version of what really happened. You know, looking at an hotel, he started to renovate it, but the hotel was bad. I mean, like no air, no heating, just bad. But he got people off the street. And then he bought the property we're in now, where it's literally put together with everything. So if you look at the front doors of the mission and all the doors of the interior, they're from the old Wenatchee High School that was demolished, I think, in the 70s. And so it was just literally a little bit of everything in that mission. But he did it. Now, those of you, this is what I'm telling you, anybody know Kirk Douglas and Ann Douglas? Those are so older. They're actors from way back when.
Right.
Catherine Zeta-Jones, you ever know?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
So I actually knew Ann Douglas and Kirk pretty well, because what Ann did is the very same thing he did. She came down to LA and said, there's homeless women. I got to do something. And she ended up building us a building just for women to get out of the danger. And down in LA, a lot of the women are being victimized and being sex slaves. So we have a whole different story about that. And so, funny how God uses people no matter where they are. A gentleman who comes in, who doesn't have a lot, to build a mission, or mega wealthy movie star who happens to drive by and see women in their need. Same exact thing, two different sides of the planet. You're really different. Go to the next one. So when I got here, we had a saying that said, Jesus helps hurting people. And the guy said, we hate that. And I said, why? She goes, we're not hurting anymore. I said, you're right. I said, you're right. And I said, well, you know, help, hope, and opportunity is the way to go. And it's the basics of life. We believe that God, the sinner, gives a hand up better than a hand out. And what we're finding was we are literally going back to the basics, very basics. Go to the next slide. We'll speed through this a little bit. So these are the numbers. They're different actually right now. When I gave this Rodney, I forgot to update it. So actually right now, food assistance, it says EBT, which is people that can get food on their own. They don't have to rely on missions and things like that. Right there says that they've gotten, let's see, 30, we're up to about 80. Medical, that's everything we found out, that people didn't know they could get medical. So that says 20, right now we're over 70 that have gotten their medical benefits. We have people who need surgeries, people that have got some big diseases they haven't been able to take care of because they didn't know they could get medical benefits. And so we're helping them get that. Identifications, can't get a job without an ID. We're about 40 of those now. Housing, we're up to 15. Sobriety is 60 ongoing. When I say ongoing, it means that people that have been sober for over 2 years. And you ask me why they're still with me, because there's no housing. Nowhere to go with. And then over 25,000 showers per year. Very important. It doesn't sound like it, but it is. 11,095 articles of clothing per year. We have a free store that the LDS church came in yesterday and actually repainted and redid for us. So it's actually really presentable. So people don't come in and just dig through a pile of clothing. It looks like a little thrift store. To get some dignity and some respect. Anybody can come in off the street. Anybody can donate. Jobs are up to 15 jobs already this year alone. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it is when you look at the job market and who a lot of guys are felons who are getting jobs. All right, next one. Change is good. So what's new? Well, actually, what's new? There's something not of it that's changed since I gave Rodney the stick. Last week, I got a call from the mayor of Wenatchee, and he said, "We need to see you as soon as possible." I'm like, "Oh, I felt like it's the principal's office. What do they do, you know?" And I got there, and with a 2-hour meeting, sat down, and he said, "I don't know what to do." He said, "This is not me again. This is what God's given me over the years of learning." He said, "You're the only person in this entire area that knows anything about homelessness, about the motorhomes, anything." And he goes, "What can you do? If you had all the resources you need, what are you going to do?" So I laid out a plan that I already laid out and said, I want to do a Project Safe Suite, which is where the motorhomes get off the streets and out of the communities and into the area where the mission is. There's a lot. Right at the top of the mission, I can put 15 motorhomes there and start working with them, getting them out of those motorhomes, finding what their needs are. Because we do outreach to them. There's only so much I can do because they move so much, because I can't move them. And that's also why they don't get services, because they just move too much. Can't find them. Mm-hmm. So now we are starting tomorrow, in less than a week, groundbreaking for that. So that's something I just said, let's do it. You know, am I scared to death? Yeah. Because I'm not even ready for that. There's only 3 of us technically running the mission. Myself, Monique, and my assistant. That's it. Helping all these people. The other part is that all shelters in the Wenatchee area are closed. So we are it now. We're the only ones that are open. YWCA still takes some people in, but they're full. They only have 10 beds, so they're full. And then it's us. That's it. 2 agencies are closed, one in East Wenatchee and one in Wenatchee, both of which served a lot of people, and they're no longer open. So we are the only thing going right now. And I don't know where that's going to go from here. I know that one other agency bought the building that one of the agencies had, and they're going to open, but they said October, but they're not even sure yet. So right now, we're it. So we're helping a lot of people as much as we can. So what we started since we've been here was a women's emergency shelter. We had all this room inside the mission. I said, "What are you doing with it?" And nothing was being done with the extra room. And when I was doing outreach last winter, the women said, "Oh no, I got a warm place tonight." I said, "How?" "Oh, a guy's paying for it." Uh-huh. You can go. You know where I'm going. They're prostituting themselves to get a warm room. I said, "Oh, that's not happening." So. Told Monique and some of the guys, let's turn our TV room right now into a small shelter. And we were able to house 14 women. And it was just literally one of those flip overnight things. We did as much as we could, quickly as we could. Our street outreach program is what we're doing now, and we're getting people all the time. We have one church that comes all the time to help me out. We go out once a week. It's not hard. A lot of people think there's a lot of difficulty in doing this. It's not. If you can love somebody and listen to somebody, you're good. And what we have found, and people ask me all the time, we brought 4 people in just last week. They're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, we aren't doing anything. We're going out, meeting people where they're at, just as Jesus did, and sit and talk. What's your needs? How can I help you? And listen. And then pray. And that's it. I'm not out there case managing people, psychologically figuring out what's going on. We are literally reaching out with just a love that God has. That's it. There's nothing else to it. And part of our outreach team, which is the church at the moment, they're now going out on their own. I'm not even with them now, and bringing people in, but also reaching out to the church as well. So they're not only in the parks and stuff, talking to people that might be experiencing homelessness, they're talking to others, the jogger or whatever, and they stop. Hey, can we pray for you for a minute? This is turning into this huge thing that God just wants it to go. And one of the things that when I came here, I thought was we're going to solve the issue of homelessness, and God's like, well, we also want you to challenge the church. And I struggled for a few months about that. I'm like, what do you want me to do? And we'll get to that challenge. Right now we're working on, we closed our cardboard business. Some of you may or may not know, there's a cardboard business running in commission. However, it wasn't making money. The people that were running said, well, I'm transferring money every month. Yeah, but you're not paying your bills to operate the thing. We've owned a business for 8 years as supplement our income. We know. I had $8 million budgets I had to monitor in California. So within minutes, I already knew it was no good. And so we closed that business, which has been great because we've actually making money now where we can sustain a little better. On-site mobile medical clinic now comes, CDCH comes on site. Financial classes, I went to People's Bank and I said, I want you guys to partner with us. I know there's other nonprofit agencies that offer financial classes. I need real world. I need somebody who's in the financial business to do that. So they came up with the curriculum, and now they're teaching financial classes to teach the guys how to budget. So if I ask somebody in a mission, how do you budget? I don't know. Where's your money? I don't know. What'd you spend it on? I don't remember. Not happening. Now, here's what we're up against with that. If anybody gets $2,000 or more in a bank account, they cut off all their assistance. Now we're in trouble. Back to square one. There are ways around that. We'll get into that, but there are ways around that. But it is certainly people that are trying to get out of homelessness are just being pushed back by policies. Policy after policy. Even with homelessness on the street, the policies of the state and the laws are changing where the cops can't do anything. You can't go in their tents, but this is what happened in LA. This is why LA has 80,000 homeless right now. It's because you can't do anything. You're not allowed to go in tents. You're not allowed to ask them to move. You're not allowed to do anything anymore. And it's just destroying what it is, you know. I'm not one of the guys that goes out and says, oh, it's okay, let them stay there. No, I don't do that because it just doesn't help anybody, including the person that's in that tent. Just keeps them going as they are. Strategic planning, they never had a strategic plan, so we have one of those in place now. Budgetary responsibility, statistical training, and now we have a low barrier shelter on top of that. And what's the difference between a low barrier shelter and a shelter? Low barrier means that you can come in without an ID, drunk, high, whatever it is. We'll take you, as long as you're not violent. Why do we do that? I don't know, ask the business owners, and some of the people around here, you want them to sleep in front of your building? But it gives me a chance to connect. Why are you drunk? Why are you on drugs? Why? And what do you need to move you forward? And it's working. Because we don't stop. Because a lot of shelters like that, they're low barrier closed. So at 7 p.m. at night, they open, 7 a.m. they close. Not us, 24/7. So, and then we have 5 extra beds for police. So when the police arrest somebody who's urinating or drunk in public, instead of taking them to jail, we divert them to us. Keep them out of jail. It costs $70,000 a year to keep a prisoner. It costs me a heck of a lot less to put them in shelter and get them where they need to go. All right, next one. So help, hope, and opportunity. Just a kind of a breakdown of what that means is help is kind of the first thing we do through outreach, food, and shelter. Hope. Well, first and foremost, giving hope is through God, right? There is no other real hope after that or before that. So I think rehabilitation, because you can't really do rehab without God. You can't. I already know this has been proven study after study. It doesn't matter. You can't do it. I went through 9 years of counseling for suicide and all kinds of stuff, and in 48 hours, God changed all that. None of that counseling worked. Job training and education, and then community family after that. Opportunity, transitional housing, employment, and permanent housing. That last one's difficult. Permanent housing, there just isn't any. And so what's happening, our shelters are getting full. I can't take any more people because I can't move people out. So we're kind of at a dilemma at the moment. But I have an idea. And that is to buy some property, and then I've been working actually with a gentleman here in Leavenworth to help design a home out of, a completely sustainable home, by the way, out of containers. And I know that I can put those containers on land and really do a good job at it, because what we're not gonna do is go up. You often see that housing will be like an apartment building. What I've learned over 25 years is those don't work. They're too secluded, you can't get to people. I'm gonna do the John way, I always tell this to everybody, a wagon wheel. So each home will be a big circle, we'll have 25 homes in a circle, and in the middle will be a case manager. So we're always watching, we're always helping, we're always working with. And not having this vertical thing that just doesn't work. I always tell people, build those, but make sure you have corner bands, because that's really what happens. I mean, when they started doing mythical housing first in LA, we saw the corner band in the building 3-4 times a day. It gets to that. All right, next one. These are some of the big, holy, audacious goals. Great sustainable village, what I just talked about. Develop a safe sleep. Here we are. And I said that, this is actually a while back, and the city kept saying no. Now they're paying for it. Financially, not paying for it, paying for it financially. Reimagine our women and children's facility. So we have a facility for women, but the unfortunate part is it was built in 1912. And so there's very steep stairs, very narrow aisles. And women and children right now are not on the street, believe it or not. I haven't seen any. What we are seeing is people that are baby boomers, that weren't expecting the economy to get like it is. Now, we knew this about 5 years ago. We started talking about it within the industry of no offense, it was called the gray wave, is coming. And what we're finding is a lot of people who are elderly or in the baby boomer section are sleeping in 24-hour fitness parking lots and then using the showers and things, and they feel safe sleeping in those areas or in the different gyms and things. So how do we address that? Monique, with our women's services, that's all we have right now is elderly. 50% of the men in my facility right now are elderly. There's nowhere for them to go, and there's no services for elderly. So there's no retirement home, there's no hospice. I got 3 guys that need a hospice. If there isn't anything, they die with us. That's okay. It's another ministry opportunity that just came out of nowhere. And so, what do? To be honest with you, don't know yet. We're still trying to figure that out. It is a big hole and a big miss within the homeless community, within the governments, just not recognizing that that's what's going on. If you go down to Wenatchee, and over there on, what is it called, Technology Way, a lot of motorhomes over there. 30%, 40% of those are elderly people that have either lost their homes, jobs, no drugs, no alcohol, just never could get into anything, or there's no help for them at all. They still make money, but not enough to pay for any kind of rent. So we do go out, we outreach to them, and we try to work as much as we can. We bring medical to them and things like that. Provide services for aged out boys in foster care. Found out there's 112 kids that are by themselves in Wenatchee alone that are either experiencing homelessness or going to. So right before the summer, the school district said, we have a boy, he's going to be homeless this week. He's 17 years old, will you take him? And I said, oh boy. And so I prayed, and God said, the liability for him is much higher than for you. So bring him in. So we did. And he's now 18, living with us, doing great. He's a straight-A student, has 2 jobs. He's working 2 part-time jobs. His mom has cancer severely in Mexico, so that's where she is. Dad was murdered, and so and it was a long story, but so he fled to California with his uncle to try to find some kind of, happiness. And this was 5 years ago. He is doing great. I can tell you now, Monique and I have discovered, because we're kind of the pseudo-parents for him, is he lacks the ability to do the basics. When I took him to the hospital, he was in his soccer practice. He called me up, he had dislocated his shoulder. And he had no idea how to navigate anything. Not to navigate the hospital, a doctor's appointment, none of that. We realized that the very basics were missing, which we did find across the board with our women, but didn't think about the kids not having it either. And so we've been teaching, training, and I've been holding him accountable, saying, no, you do it. I'll tell you how to do it, you're gonna do it. And so he gets a little frustrated, but he's doing good. And he's back in school at Wenatchee High. He graduates this year. So does that mean our women and children's facility changes to a kids facility? It might. It just depends on what God wants us to do. I mean, as you see, we're just getting thrown all kinds of stuff right now. But hey, all right, we'll see what we can do. Create a specific outreach team that targets the most vulnerable people experiencing homelessness. That's what we're doing right now with the church. Believe me when I tell you, God changes people immediately. Challenge churches to join us and meet people where they're at, provide unconditional love and support. Create a church home for women and men. Our men don't have a church to go to. Most of them because they can't drive there, can't get there. And sadly, and this is in California too, I call churches, do you have somebody who can pick them up? No, we don't.
Wow.
Sorry, I can't come. No. We ask churches, could you come do a Bible study once a month? No. We just don't have the time for that. And what's happened is, when we've seen this, and I'm going to be very blunt, churches have become so self-focused. And so I say that churches almost become a self-help group and forgetting what's out right outside the door. The next slide there. Yeah, so we get to this. This is me pretty much every day. How can you help? All right, next slide. So I concentrated the whole thing on the fruit of the Spirit, and this really touched me because, most of us have read this verse many times, but fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there are no other laws. I started thinking, and God just started putting stuff on my heart, that the fruit of the Spirit is a natural result of presence of the Holy Spirit in a believer. Fruit of the Spirit, fruit is a person's outward actions that result from the condition of the heart. Fruit is unique to each tree, right? Because the banana gives you the potassium, the orange gives you the vitamin C, and the roughage comes from your apple. They're all different, but they're still same fruit, doing the same different things for the body of Christ, as I say. Are you ready to use your fruit that you have grown to help another person who may not know God can restore their lives? One thing we learned big time within the spiritual part of what we do is that church hurt. 90% of the people we serve hate church because of something that's happened to them there, or like me, knew somebody was in the church, did something to them, or just have been ignored by the church, and they just gradually began to hate the church. All right, next slide. We're almost done, I promise. So, our mission is your mission. We want you to use your fruit to help others discover their fruit. We want trees to grow out of the mission. I don't want a bunch of guys walking around yelling verses at me because somebody taught them the verse. I want them to actually know the verse and bear fruit. Now, I don't ask churches for money. I really don't. I mean, this is just kind of a generic. So what I really want you to do is look at volunteering and come. Come join us on our outreaches. Come over and just talk, volunteer, help. When you volunteer, it's not about the project. It isn't. It's about the people who watch you doing the project. What we've learned too is that over time, when churches come in, they all watch you. Did you see them? They were arguing. All they were was taking pictures of each other. We hear that all the time. I love when pastors call me and say, we'll come do a service. And I'll say, okay, well, how many people are going to show up? I said, does it matter? Doesn't matter. Because God has people in those seats that need to be in those seats right then. Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. And what we want you is you. Your prayers, your physical being. Cook. We have an adopt a meal program. You come in and you cook a home meal. Those are so popular because what happens is it gets on the street. That church is coming. We have a church that regularly cooks. That church is coming. Oh man, our numbers go up because they know. But guess what? That's a time for you to sit down and start talking to them about what God's done for you. Who cares about the food? That's the lead-in. I say we're like Amway with that. The food's just kind of the foot in the door. Say, you know what? We have some soap to sell you. So, Monique and I call it ninja Christianity. We come in there, people strike hard, and they don't know what hit them. Then they ask for more. That's what we want. Do your checkbook at home. Come kick the tires. Come see what's going on. We want to make a change in this valley. From Leavenworth all the way out to India, everywhere. Because we are it in the whole area. And by the way, we have come up to Leavenworth. There's guys out here yelling in the street, and I happen to know them. People look at me really weird and like, John, get over here. And you're like, what do you know this guy? So, it's that simple. If you know how to love, if you know how to care, and you know how to listen, there isn't anything else besides that. It really isn't. When I tell people that, what are you doing to get people in? How are you doing that? We just kind of smirk and that's it. There isn't anything. There's no special training. There's no, you don't got to worry. You don't got to freak out. Some people don't like to do that kind of outreach. That's fine. There's plenty to do. There's plenty to do there. But I just encourage you to pray. Pray for us. We have a massive job ahead of us that I did not expect last week. That was such a surprise when the mayor called me and said, he told me directly, when the city gets involved, things get messed up. I need you to do it. You're the only person that can. That's a huge responsibility for me, but I said, oh, well, no. That goes straight upstairs. That goes to God, not me. And that goes to God's people. The most effective outreach we have right now is the one church that partners with us and goes out and does outreach. That's the most effective in the entire valley, mind you. We're bringing in more people from that church outreach than any other people out there. Anybody. Anybody. Hope that sinks in of what the church is doing. And that idea, I wish was mine. It came from a friend of mine, and I'll stop with this. In the sheriff's department in LA, LA County Sheriff's has thousands of people in the jails. I have a friend that runs a church ministry in the jail, and he comes in and he helps people get out and find places they need to go and ministers to them at the same time. He said, let me take the whole thing over as our ministry. And jail says, no, you guys are religious. We don't do religion. Another year goes by, failure after failure. Let me do it. Let me do it again. No, you guys are religious. We don't do religion. I'll be darned that last year, just before we left, his name is Frank, and he said, guess what they just did? I said, what? He said, they called me up, the bigwigs, the sheriff of LA County said, you're the only effective thing working for these men. We want you to take it all over. And I took that model and ran with it. Because the most effective model for homelessness is God. Period. There is no other. You can give counseling, you can give drug rehab, you can give needles, you can give all these things they're trying to do. God is the only thing that works. And I have 25 years experience to prove it. To prove it. But I can't do it without God's people. And my goal is not to bring in a bunch of employees. My goal is to get God's people out of their seats and come help as God has commanded you to do. Period. There is no other ands or buts about it. God has asked us to take care of the poor, take care of the people that need our help. That's what we need to do. It doesn't mean give up foreign missions or anything like that. It just means give us of your time. Just your time. Whether that's through prayer, cooking a meal, setting a pie, I don't know. Whatever it is that God leads you to do. And go with it. If God says something to you and says, I think the mission might need this, just call us and tell us, hey, I'm coming down with pickles. God said, bring them. I can't tell you how many times I prayed. I'm not joking. I prayed for zucchini. Because what you don't know is we lost both our freezers and our cook all in the same week. $150,000 in freezers. When you got to be cooking, we're cooking for 6 weeks, 7 days a week. Had nowhere to cook. We were just trying our best. And I said, oh my gosh, we're out of zucchini. And money's just tight right now because of the economy. And this lady shows up with 3 bags of big giant zucchinis out of the garden. That's how minute God gets. So if you get something in your head that says, I think I need to go to the mission, please, don't ignore it. Whether it's a zucchini or $5 billion, don't ignore it. Because it is what it is. God speaks to me that way, and I know He speaks to everybody else. And I'll leave you with this, just a little bit of faith, is that Monday morning I woke up. I said, Lord, I need money. I just talk like that. Lord, I need money. I didn't get into some big because of this. I said, Lord, I need money, and I walked off to work. Got into work, there was $20,000 sitting there from donors I had never met, never knew of, never seen them. So God works in just that little bit of faith. And our men, believe it or not, and our women have a little faith left. We just need y'all to come in and get that tree to grow. So I think I'm a little over a few minutes. I didn't go till dinner, so we're good, right? And I didn't get a hotel at would you say the Hyatt? We were eavesdropping. He says, yeah, our speaker's coming to town. We usually put him up. Is it the Hyatt, right? What you were talking? What was it? Hampton. Yeah, Hyatt. See, that's the LA talk, right? The Hampton. And so I was like, I looked over. When you guys, we don't get in the Hampton. We're from out of town. So anyway, I'm just teasing you. So beautiful city, by the way. We love coming up here when it's not all smoke. So we're still getting used to the smoke.
Yeah, that's bad.
Did you want to end up here, or do you want me to end, or how do you want me to do?
We're going to sing one final song.
Okay.
Tell you why it's challenging to know that you don't have to go off to special training at a special college somewhere to learn how to do this. You know, you don't have to have a special degree. You don't have to have any degree. You don't have to have any education except for what were those 3 things?
Oh,
The 3 things?
love, willingness to listen,
Listen.
and compassion really is what it really is.
That's it.
There's nothing else.
Just be there.
Yep.
Hey, if God's speaking to you, we can all do it. And I feel very guilty because all I got to do, if I could do it, just go right over the mountain and I'm right there. I mean, I'm about half a mile by as the crow flies. So let's stand and sing together. One stanza of "'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take Him at His word." 'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take Him at His remember those have needs that we need to be praying for. And ask the Lord to make you a conduit of His grace this week. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for this ministry, the way it has grown and the way it has blossomed and the way you have used someone who just says, I'll do what you want me to do. That's all he says. And you have used this family in not just Wenatchee, but in LA and wherever they are, and have just made an impact under the bridge and down in the valley. And we pray, Lord, as they continue their work, it'll become our work. We ask our blessings upon us now as we go our separate ways, that we'll take you with us everywhere we go, and everything we do, and everything we are. In thy name we pray. Amen. God bless you. Have a good week.
I am in love, but the house is over. Yeah, I'll be bringing it.
So give us a sheet to come to my neighbor. My receipts.
Okay. And my daughter often goes
So wonderful to have this family members.
Thank you. I like to hear.
We go to Narrative Day and mention how they were.
Of course, the window was really
Yeah, it's like,
Oh, yeah.
go off into the sunset, you know, like everything we know.
We're not planning.
It is, yeah, you know, we actually bought a house.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
gonna
I'm
still
hoping
be here.
Okay?
you're here, so
My old home.
Yeah, here. Okay.
Friday, what time is it? I just
An hour, 11, 1, for a while. Oh, have those kind of really good programs.
But the Lord,
What you got here?
What you'll have to do
Stuff and I'll do it my
is
way.
what I'll have to do, I know it's just
What
beyond.
happens when you shake it? You made the boats?
Okay, just beyond the hand.
Did you already hit that off? Oh no, still going.